Now, with social distancing rules in place and strip clubs and brothels closed, sex workers around the world have seen their incomes disappear almost overnight as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. Here at home, the Sex Workers Education and Advocacy Taskforce, SWET, says sex workers face new dangers under lockdown. They're calling for a probe into the death of Elma Montsumi, a sex worker who died in police custody at Mowbray police station in Cape Town in April. Police say she committed suicide at the station. Well, to discuss the plight of sex workers, we're now joined by Megan Lessing, a media officer for SWET. Ms. Lessing, thank you very much. Let's start with Elma Montsumi. Strange circumstances. Just tell us what you believe happened that night.
We don't know what happened that night or that day. What we do know is that she was arrested on the 9th of April, on the Thursday. And then 4 days later, she was dead. And what we want to do is to have a independent probe and investigation. And this is why we roped in 3 independent bodies. You know, we roped in the Human Rights Commission. We got the Commission for Gender Equality involved, and we also got IPID involved. So we want to get to the bottom of what happened to Robin at Mowbray police station.
Do you have any reason to believe that the police story is wrong, that she committed suicide in the cells?
To us, the idea that someone in this day and age can still commit suicide in a cell, even if she did, that mandates an investigation as to how. Someone is not supposed to be able to commit suicide within a cell. There's supposed to be checks and balances in place, There's certain things that came to be under a lockdown, in terms of how bail is now fixed, sort of to get things under control. And we feel that did not happen in Robin's case, Why was she only booked on the Sunday, but she was arrested on the Thursday?
Yeah.
The detective that came to book her found her body. Where was the officer that was already stationed at the police station? So these are the questions that we have,
Yeah. And are you confident IPID investigating other bodies as well, that they'll get to the bottom of the matter?
We don't, our focus is not on the competence of the bodies, but what we do know is that if we ask the police questions, those answers will have no credibility. And our focus is on having independent outside investigations into the police for us to have a proper understanding as to how someone in this day and age can still die in a holding cell.
Ms. Lessing, we know that sex workers are vulnerable generally, and you say they face new dangers under lockdown. Tell us what those are.
Well, sex workers, and we do this every year where we release a report on the violence and the deaths of sex workers in this country. So sex workers face extremely high levels of violence from clients, intimate partners, at the hands of the police. But in our research and years of working with sex workers on the ground, the police remains the most consistent and systemic source of abuse against sex workers in terms of direct physical violence, sexual violence, human rights violations. At this point, we are not sure exactly how many sex workers would have to die before this government honors its promise to decriminalize sex work.
I presume sex work is not allowed under the regulations. Maybe you can clarify that. That seems pretty obvious, but maybe some women desperate still out there. Does it mean that police are more likely to scrutinize them?
Well, sex work is criminalized in this country, so it's already a criminal act. What we're saying is that especially maybe this case becomes, and this is probably where the involvement of the Human Rights Commission becomes very prominent for us, the overzealousness of the Cape Town police in having homeless sex workers, marginalized and vulnerable populations taken off the streets, in response. And that was what we can maybe determine is the only response that they have towards this pandemic was towards these vulnerable populations. So, yes, we want eyes on how is it, because it ties into why was she stopped. We, at this point, don't even know what time she was arrested, what was the reason for the police having stopped her in the first place. So these are part of what we are trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Are you lobbying at all? I mean, of course, it's a strange situation because, like you said, technically not allowed, but are you lobbying for sex workers to be out on the streets again?
No, what we're lobbying for is for sex work to be decriminalized for 25 years now. Currently, what we are lobbying for within a pandemic for the sex work industry is for government to come to the party. We understand, we have done years and years of research of how sex work is actually policed in this country. We have so much information on the human rights violations that police do, because the law that governs sex work currently is an outdated apartheid law. And what happens in these cases is that the police now police sex work with bylaws like loitering and vagrancy, and those kind of ambiguous lines give rise to these type of incidences of violations and stuff that happens in a holding cell. So yes, what we want government to do for now, because we are in a pandemic and we are in a crisis situation, is to come to the party, give assistance, because the reality is that this country, with a population of, between maybe 160,000 to almost 200,000 sex workers, need assistance.
All right. Thank you for your time tonight. That was Megan Lessing, Media Officer for Sweat.